difficulties with our Pause Abroad info session. Our recording has started, so hopefully everyone's comfortable with that. Again, welcome. My name is Ramona Washington. We're going to be going over how to study abroad, what are the benefits of studying abroad, how to finance studying abroad, all that good stuff. And we've got some great alums here. I'll introduce my colleagues also on the line. Allie Swenson, she's going to be monitoring any questions that have come into the chat. We also have some study abroad alums here. I will let everyone introduce themselves. So Allie, do you want to just jump in really quickly and introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Allie Swenson. I am a study abroad coordinator in charge of faculty-led programs, so short-term programs offered by professors at UW-M. I personally studied abroad my junior year, and I went to Paris for a semester to study language and culture. And after I graduated college, I went and I taught English for a year back in France.
Okay, that's a good point. I forgot to say where I studied abroad. So I studied abroad 1,000 years ago, but I did study abroad through UW-M. I was a French major, so I did a semester in Paris, and I did a summer program to Morocco. So it was all about the French language learning. So great. Let's see. Destiny, do you want to share where you studied abroad? Let's see. Let's share what your major was and where you studied abroad.
Hey everyone, my name is Destiny Jones. I majored in criminal justice. I studied abroad twice. I did 3 months in Thailand my junior year and 4 weeks in London my senior year.
Great. And Violetta?
Hi everyone, my name is Violetta. I'm a recent graduate and I studied abroad in Suwon, South Korea for the academic year. And my major was global studies.
Fantastic. And Monique?
Hi, everyone. I graduated from UW-M and I went to study abroad during my junior year, and I went to Japan for about 3 weeks.
Fantastic. So yeah, so I'm going to go through, I really would like to keep this conversational as much as possible. I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to go through. I'm going to probably try and go through it pretty quickly, but we have lots of folks on the call, so I would really love to have you all interact with the alum. They're going to be talking about their experiences. They've got some photos to share with you, and I really would love to keep this as conversational as possible. So now I'm going to try, bear with me while I share my screen here. Okay. Can everyone see it? Perfect. Okay. So in our office, this is just a quick exercise that we did a few years ago now. We really kind of sat down and hashed out what are the basic tenets that we believe about studying abroad, right? So we all in our office, all of us have studied abroad before, and we felt so strongly about the power of studying abroad and the benefits of it that we kind of hashed out what our basic beliefs are as a team. And so we really believe, to me, with all of these bullet points, the one that most stands out is that study abroad is transformative, right? It sort of encapsulates all the other bullets together. It fosters independence, it fosters self-confidence, it pushes your boundaries by doing that, right? So studying abroad really is about getting out of your comfort zone. It helps you to become a better global citizen and overall really transforms you as that global citizen. Why is this not changing? Oh, there we go. I'm not pressing the right button, I don't think. So what does study abroad really mean? So basically it means going abroad and getting academic credit. And you're learning in another country, be it online or on site. So right now you may be wondering about traveling. Right now, we have a couple students who are abroad because they were abroad in springtime and they've stayed abroad. But we're really encouraging students to either do one of two things, either study or plan for a study abroad in the future, or plan to do virtual opportunities. Our industry has been really creative, given our current pandemic, with offering students opportunities to study virtually. And that really means different things depending on what the program looks like. It could mean doing an entire program through a foreign university online. It could mean sort of a hybrid. You take a few classes through UW-M, and you can take a few classes through the foreign university. And then the third thing that a lot of students are interested in right now is doing an international internship virtually. So you're working on a project with a company, and you're really sort of fostering that resume building through that. So international internships virtually are very big right now. So something to consider, while traveling is a little bit on hold. So again, we really want students to prepare and think about in the future, when we're able to travel again, how to make study abroad a reality. And then in the meantime, you can certainly consider virtual experiences. So there are many different ways to study abroad at UW-M. We've got short-term faculty-led programs. We've got semester and year-long exchanges, semester and year-long non-exchanges, basically. And then we've got some independent study abroad programs, internships, and then the virtual opportunities that I just mentioned before. So all different ways, really. You can study abroad basically any term at UW-M, winter program, summer program, semester, or year long. And we've got, with our alums here, I just realized that we have kind of a representative for all of that, summer, all that, year, semester. So any semester really, or any term you can study abroad. So why study abroad? What are some of the benefits of studying abroad? You can earn credits toward your degree or major. That's one thing. It's not just a wasted semester abroad. These credits count. They count at least as elective credit, and sometimes and oftentimes they can count towards your major or degree requirement and keep you on track for graduation. You develop a deep cross-cultural understanding and the personal growth, right? We talked a little bit about that in that first slide when I talked about the tenets of our office. All of those things are really beneficial when it comes to studying abroad. Improve your language skills. You don't have to have a second language to study abroad. Sometimes students think that you have to know Spanish to go to Spain, or German if you want going to Germany, but you don't have to have a second language to study abroad. And you're not relegated to only going to an English-speaking country if you don't know a second language. For instance, Destiny went to Thailand. She didn't speak Thai, but she spent a whole semester in Thailand. So you don't have to have a foreign language, even to go to a non-English speaking country. A big tangible reason to study abroad, though, is the resume builder part. We've got some statistics here, and the stats don't lie. Studying abroad is considered a high impact practice. And a high impact practice is an activity that you undertake while you're in college that helps with retention and helps with graduation. And study abroad has proven to be one of those high impact practices that students do. In addition to that, it looks great on your resume. So students who studied abroad earn 25% higher starting salaries. 90% of study abroad alum are accepted into their first or second grad school. And then 90% of study abroad alums find a job quicker. So it really helps to have that on your resume. It's sort of like you've got the intangible benefits of studying abroad, builds your self-confidence, it's transformative, it makes you a better global citizen. Those are fantastic, but also, bam, put that on your resume, and it really helps to make you a much more competitive candidate in the end. So those are the reasons why you should study abroad. Choosing the right program. So all different kinds of terms you can study abroad on, I mentioned, and there's lots of things to consider when you're thinking about studying abroad and trying to find a program fit that's right for you. One is the academic offerings, keeping in mind your major. If you're looking at programs, what kinds of courses does that university offer? The country of study, again, that's kind of a tough decision I find sometimes for students to make. Because they kind of want to go all over. Sometimes students know where they want to go, but I'd say trying to determine what country of study you're interested in is going to be a big step in helping you to choose a program. Deciding if you want the on-site experience or the virtual experience. With the virtual experience, we find that students oftentimes it's sort of an introductory to an on-site experience later. So if you're interested in studying abroad, but you're not sure how long or if it's really for you, sometimes a virtual experience can be a good way to sort of dip your toe into that international experience and global experience, and then do an in-country, in-person experience later. Kind of reflecting on if you want to be in the city or in a rural location. Does your program require language levels, a certain language ability? I mentioned you don't have to have a language to study abroad, but maybe that's your goal. Maybe your goal is language acquisition. So you really want to go to Spain or Japan or Korea, wherever it might be. So determining whether or not you meet the minimum language requirement for a specific program. Independent versus a guided study abroad. Some of our study abroad programs are more independent than others. Typically our exchange programs, and that's where we're actually swapping students for a semester. Sometimes that can be a little bit more independent versus a non-exchange program where you're typically going through a provider that's a little bit more structured, a little more cohorty, and so kind of thinking about what you want out of your program. And then of course, cost can be a determinant. It's a wide spectrum of cost when it comes to studying abroad. All of our programs have budgets on the website with each program, and so you can see what the estimated costs are for each program. So that's one thing you can look at when you're searching independently. So when can you study abroad? We recommend students study abroad anytime after their completed freshman year. So if this is your freshman year, typically the first time you can study abroad it would be summer of 2021. There are some exceptions if you're super motivated and super eager to do it now. In spring semester, our deadlines are coming up, but we do review exception requests on a case-by-case basis. So that's typically when students study abroad. Depending on the program, there can be some constraints. Any major can study abroad, but just depending on what degree program you're in, sometimes it can be a little more tricky to do, say, a semester or an academic year. I'm thinking mostly of, we've got a couple of examples here in the PowerPoint, nursing, because you do clinicals in nursing, education majors with your teaching requirements or student teaching requirements, engineering majors, just because you have very sequential sort of curriculum. So there's a few majors where it can be a little more tricky, not impossible, but a little more tricky and requires a little more planning to actually fit in a full semester or a whole academic year to study abroad. And in terms of delaying graduation, I know that's a big concern students have for studying abroad. Not necessarily. We'll talk about ways that you can really sort of mitigate the graduation delay and really working in a program that will benefit you most academically. Oops. So financing study abroad, that's a huge question I know with students. How do you pay for it? Most students at UW-M finance their study abroad opportunity with their financial aid. So if you get financial aid, you can use it. It just basically travels with you. That's the big thing, is the financial aid part. We do have financing sessions where we present with our contact in the financial aid office, Gayla Jenkins. She's fabulous. And she goes over how to use your aid to study abroad, how you may even be eligible to get additional aid to study abroad. In addition to your financial aid, which you're already getting, a lot of students apply for scholarships. There are many scholarships out there to study abroad, grants or scholarships. There is specifically, I'm thinking of the Wisconsin Study Abroad grant. That one you have to be a Wisconsin resident. Undergrad, you have to file FAFSA. And there's not a whole lot of qualifications with that, but that's a super popular grant that students apply for to study abroad. There's something called the Gilman Scholarship, and that's for Pell Grant recipients. And so that's a national scholarship. And that's another opportunity that students have to study abroad. There are regional scholarships sometimes. For instance, there's someone for Freeman Asia. That's for students who want to go to Asia. So there's all different kinds of free money opportunities for students to look up and understand. So just understand that typically students do a combination of financial aid as well as loans and scholarships. And then, of course, personal planning. being creative using Kickstarter, GoFundMe, just planning in advance, and doing your own personal savings will also help as well. So I mentioned the financing session here. Those are definitely recommended, highly recommended. You can go, we have some this semester. If you're looking at studying abroad a year from now, you're welcome to go now, kind of get the basics of it, and then go again later to get a refresher of it. But we really do a thorough job of helping you understand how your financial aid works with studying abroad. And Gala is actually able to really give you an even in-depth and personal, like a customized estimate of what your financial aid package might look like once you've selected a program. Because what she does is she recalculates your aid based on your cost of attendance for that program and your FAFSA information to determine whether or not you're eligible for any additional aid when you study abroad. So how do you get started with studying abroad? I know it can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes, but one of the most important things you can do, aside from just exploring our website and doing our program search, is to meet with your academic advisor. It's study abroad, right? So your academic advisor has your degree requirements. Everyone's degree requirements are different. They know how far along you've progressed in those degree requirements, what classes you have to take, what classes you have left to take, and what classes they would recommend that you take here on campus and what classes to save for studying abroad. And that's that strategic academic planning that helps to keep you on track for graduation in a way that you expect. So typically, those are your elective credits, right? Those can be elective credits, are easier to get abroad because it's more general than here on campus. But sometimes you can even get specific courses taken care of abroad. There's something called the course equivalency process. And it's basically where the department that would typically offer the course here on campus can let you substitute that course in to count as a substitution, basically. So again, meeting with your academic advisor early on, letting them know you want to study abroad will help them to help you plan it out in a way that's most convenient for you. Keeping your GPA as high as possible is great. Our programs, the GPA requirement ranges from a 2.5 to 3.2, but the minimum is typically a 2.5 GPA requirement. So the highest you can keep it, the better. Visiting our website and exploring your program options again, that's the fun part, right? You get to go on and think about, sort of reflect on, if you could go almost anywhere in the world and live and get academic credit, where would that be, right? So I'd say that's probably your first step in thinking about what you want to do, is reflecting, doing that reflecting process and thinking about what language do I want to learn or hone. Maybe you already know a second language, you want to test it out in the country, what culture sort of intrigues you, and then explore our website. You can search our website by country, you can search by major or subject area. So it's really a good way that you can kind of drill down and see what country or what programs offer classes in business or sociology and things like that. Come meet with us. We are doing virtual advising right now, of course, but we're happy to meet with you and talk about how to get started on a one-on-one basis and answer any questions that you might have. Going to one of those virtual study abroad information financing sessions that I talked about earlier is a great way, again, to get the understanding and the lay of the land in terms of money. Researching scholarships. It's never too early to research free money, right? Look out there, look on our website, see what scholarships are available, looking at what deadlines there are, looking to see what the requirements are. Do you need a letter of recommendation for something? Thinking about who you might want to write that letter of recommendation for a scholarship. Getting your passport. If you don't have a passport, that's something to do now, actually. Right now, given our worldwide special circumstances, the Department of State, which is the entity that issues passports, the last I heard was typically in non-COVID times, to get a passport, it was between 4 to 6 weeks, but now I think they're running to several months. So I would say if you don't have a passport, get it. It's good for 10 years. What's the harm in having your passport? So apply for your passport now because there is a delay because of the pandemic. If you're at all curious about health insurance or support while you're abroad, just basically know that our office provides you with international health insurance that keeps you healthy and safe while you're abroad. It's something that we take care of for you. You pay for it through PAWS, but we actually facilitate the coverage of your international health insurance while you're abroad. And you'll have a lot of support through on-site staff or perhaps a faculty leader if there's a professor that's going abroad with you. But you'll have a lot of support either through our on-site staff colleagues there, or if you're with a faculty-led program, that faculty leader is with you the whole time that you're in the country, obviously. We do have pre-departure orientations, so we'll provide you with things like some administrative items we go over, like enrollment and finances, but we do a lot of like culture shock and transitioning to life abroad and things like that. So we prepare you through a pre-departure orientation. Oftentimes you then get if you go for a semester or a year, you'll get an in-country orientation as well, like one from the host institution or our program provider. We provide you with emergency contact information should something happen. Alert Traveler is our new-ish online health and safety support system where we can even sort of reach out to you through that system and ask you to check in should something happen internationally. And then we encourage students to enroll in the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. That's through the U.S. Department of State, and that's where the government would actually contact you, again, making you aware of situations that might be happening while you're abroad. So why not you and why not now? I love this slide. This is a lot of our student photos of students that have studied abroad in the past, but it's really something that you should definitely consider because studying abroad is definitely a possibility for you. And then finally, right now is our Education Abroad Week. Today is the second to last day. We had our virtual study abroad fair yesterday and Tuesday, and it was great. But we still do have a couple of days left in our Education Abroad Week. And then even today we have a session called Internationalizing Your Degree with Global Studies at 2 p.m. So I encourage you to go onto our website here to find out the list of Education Abroad Week events. And tomorrow we have a couple of other events. One is #career goals, what study abroad can do for you. That's through CPARC, through the Career Planning and Resource Center. And they're going to be talking about, again, how to leverage studying abroad once you have studied abroad and helping you to make yourself a more competitive candidate once you get out into the workforce. And then we also have a Boren information session. That's one of those scholarships that I did not mention earlier, but Boren is a study abroad scholarship basically, and it's really for language learners. And so if you're interested in studying abroad and language learning as part of that studying abroad, Boren, you can get up to $20,000 for a Boren scholarship. That's also through the Department of State, basically, through the umbrella of the Department of State. But that's a great session to go to learn again about a big scholarship for studying abroad. This is our contact information. Again, there's our website. You can get to our program search from our website there. Our email address, if you're interested in having a virtual advising session, I highly encourage you to contact us. We can set you up with someone who can talk you through the process, really, if you're, again, sort of overwhelmed and not sure how to start. We are operating mostly virtually. We have a few in-person hours on Mondays and Thursdays in our office, but for the most part, we're available virtually Monday through Friday from 8 to 4:30. And then you can, of course, follow us on our social media there. So that's all I have in terms of a formal presentation. I would like to turn it over to my colleagues and former students here. Let's see. Monique, would you like to go first in talking about, I know you mentioned where you studied, but just talking about your experience abroad, maybe something you all can think about when you're sort of talking about your experiences, like what drove you to study abroad, how did you get started, what kind of pushed you over the edge with making that decision to actually study abroad, and then talking about how did you select your program, what did you like most about it, and just kind of sharing general information like that.
That I can do. Should I share my pictures now or later?
Yeah, that would be great. I don't know if I have to stop sharing.
Wait, here are my pictures. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. So, right. So, yes, I went to Japan. And so how it all started was ever since I went into college, since I got accepted, I just always said like, yeah, I'm going to go study abroad. That's usually what you do when you're in college, right? And so I didn't think that was actually possible though, because I mean, one, we all kind of know that study abroad is not cheap. And so finally it was turning to my junior year, and of course I don't have that many years left, so I really pushed myself in order to get things done because I really wanted to get the most out of college. And so what happened is that I talked to several people. I went to CIE and talked to, I believe it was Yomari, and she was the one who really kind of got me to push and kind of get the information that I needed. And so what was great was that I also had my teacher who also I was very fond of. He was a brilliant man. He was always very funny, and then like he always talked to Japan in a loving way. And he was starting this program for the first time, and it was only for 2 weeks. It would be totally out the way. It wouldn't be harming like my academics. I can still graduate, and it was perfect. And so I did that, and it was again for like 2.5 weeks, and I stayed a couple like days afterwards. And so it was so much fun, but it was so busy. I remember one day, and then like this is a picture of actually it's Inari Mountain, and what it is that as you can see, like there's these torii gates, so you see like the orange pillars, and there's 1,000. I mean, not even 1,000. I want to say like 100,000 of them, and it's all along a mountain. It was the coolest thing. And so we went up there, we literally ran all across the whole entire mountain, and you have to reach the top. And then there's actually a deceiving top. So once we got to the false top, we realized it wasn't really the top. So we had to run all the way back to where we started and then go all the way to the top. So anyway, that was fun. But then the next day, I mean, I'm not even kidding, we were so drained that we could barely like wake up for the next thing. I mean, we were dragging our feet. It was a long day, but it was magical. I mean, we learned about the traditional Japan and its history and traditions, and then and this is like Himejume Castle, the White Castle that everyone sees in
That's
Japan.
Beautiful.
It is. Oh my God. But what I will say is that the stairs, be careful of the stairs. Japanese stairs are very steep. And then especially if you go into here like we did, you can't wear shoes. And so I only had socks on, so you have to be very careful when you go up those stairs. And then also what's wonderful about Japan is like the technology, and then the kind of funness about Japan and its uniqueness. And so what was cool about like the cities in Japan is that they always had these giant arcades. I'm not kidding you. This arcade is 3 floors, and it has different kinds of sections. And so, yeah, it's a wonderful place. It's magical. It's my favorite. I have nothing good things to say. And that's it.
That's awesome. Let's see. Violetta, how about you next?
Hello. So I actually started off my college career as a 2-year student. So I went to community college, and that's where I started my international education adventures. So I initially went to Japan for a 2 to 3 week program. It was faculty led. And from there, after I transferred to UWM, that's when I did my whole academic abroad. So academic year abroad. So when it's asked like, why did you go abroad? For me, it was simply because I am the first in my family to go to college. So it wasn't about at that time, oh, I wanted a culture exchange and this and that. It was more of like, I want to celebrate my first year that I completed and I did great. So whatever your reason is, don't let people invalidate it for you. Like, you have your reasons. As long as you go abroad, that's my big push, is just go if you just want to celebrate to end off your first year. So what I did with my academic year, let me bring up the pictures. So can you see that? Hello?
Yep.
Okay. So I went to South Korea for the academic year, and it was just the best option for me because before everything, like before I transferred to UWM, I was very involved with international students because at that time I never thought I'd have the opportunity to even go abroad in the first place. I thought it was something that seemed impossible for me. So the way I got involved with like the international community was by joining like international club at my 2-year school and just trying to like meet other students that way. And then from their experience, that motivated me of, oh, I want to go study abroad as well. So then when I was looking into an academic year, initially I wanted to go for a semester. But because I saw I was observing like the students that were at like the 2-year or the 4-year, most of them that were exchange students were only there for a semester. And then after the semester, they were like, great, I should have done a year. So when I saw how they reflected on that, that's when I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go for the year instead for a semester. So the picture you actually see with like the giant library and the Christmas tree in the back, those are actually students that were exchange students at UWM. So it was just wonderful to see them when I went abroad. The student next to me in the green coat, he was actually from Japan. So him and his girlfriend went to visit us. So it just felt like nothing ever changed and we just were reunited again. So that was really wonderful. The bottom picture of me in the pink top, that was during the first week that I arrived to Korea. So what my university did was they arranged a day to take all the new exchange students on a cultural trip. So they had 4 different options and we got to choose one of our liking. So I chose the trip to Seoul. So that was really great, and just bonding for the whole day with the new students. So that was a wonderful way to make friends and meet everybody. And on the picture on the left was at Seoul Tower. So that was just a day trip that me and some of the exchange students did on our own. And then here, this is more of like who I got to meet within the Korean community. So the bottom picture, that was during orientation. That was really fun too. And I believe we had almost 200 new exchange students there. And then on the left, what the campus had was actually an international week. So similar like education, International Education Week, but for them it was more to celebrate their international students. So that was really cool because each student that wanted to participate in that fair set up a booth. They were selling food up from their country, and a lot of the Korean students would just come and exchange that way as well. And there was like musical performances and all that. So that was really a really cool experience to see. And then on the top right, that was people that I met within the community on my own because I started getting involved in other ways. So that was like a mix of people of different ages. So that was really cool as well, of exchanging ideas and cultures. There were people that were from like the Philippines, Korea as well, different parts of Latin America. So that was a really cool thing, especially for me identifying as Mexican American. It was really cool to see that there was like a group of people that I could identify with, because there wasn't really a lot of Spanish speakers that I met when I was on campus. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for that synopsis. Okay, Destiny, you're up. Oops, I didn't get to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hey, y'all. I had the opportunity to study abroad twice. The first time I studied abroad was in Thailand for 3 months, and then I went to London for 4 weeks. I'm going to show you guys the pictures. Let me look. Share desktop. Are y'all able to see the picture?
Yep.
Okay.
Skydiving, I can't believe it.
Skydiving, got the right elephants, got the belly of the elephants. Okay, so what made me study abroad in Thailand? One day I went to an information session. It was my junior year, and I was like, let me go. I had some time in between classes, so I attended it. It was hosted by Yomari, and I heard Charles' story about when he went to study abroad. And I was like, if they can do it, I can do it too. And it had me thinking, like, I wanted to study abroad because nobody in my family went before. So I was like, this a big step for me. So I want to study abroad. So one night I was surfing the internet and I was looking at pictures of elephants. So I went on the website for CIE and I seen that it was affordable to go and I wanted to ride elephants. So I'm like, let me submit this application. It was the night the deadline it was due. So I looked up information together, like passports, reached out to professors to see if they write me a recommendations. I went in, I spoke with Ramona and she explained, she seen how passionate I was to go. So she helped me with the process to get my application complete, helped me with the passport, and then I was able to go study abroad. I really enjoyed Thailand. I met my lifelong friends, like my best friend. With Thailand, they assigned you a buddy. So my buddy, her name was Ping. She spoke English, and then I learned some Thai from interacting with her. So my favorite part of Thailand was skydiving, riding the elephants, the many forms of transportation. And then after I got back from Thailand, I was able to go speak at a conference. And then I was able to, I found out about the wrongful conviction program. So that motivated me to go to London. When I went to London, I was able to, it helped me motivated me to go to law school to help people that's been wrongfully convicted. So you guys have any other questions?
That's awesome. I remember when Destiny found that program, it was like right up as a criminal justice major, and it just aligned so much with your interests. And then you were able to like get those credits to count in a certain way and figure out the financing and everything. So that was fantastic. So I don't know, do we have more questions in the chat, Allie, after that?
We had a couple. I've been answering them, but so far nothing new. So if you have more, please feel free to put them in the chat box.
Yeah, this is the time to ask these guys any kind of questions that you are curious about in terms of their experience, where they lived, if they got homesick, if, you know, how did they communicate with their families back home, anything like that. Now's the time. You can either unmute yourself and talk if you're brave, or you can just drop the question in the chat. I have a question actually for you all. What was, if you could pick your top, say your top 3 favorite things about your study abroad program, what would they be? And Violetta, you've got to turn your camera back on. We can't see you. Your
Sorry,
top 3.
I keep forgetting.
That's okay.
My top 3, I think with my study abroad program specifically that I chose with Audrey University is that I really appreciated that with my program we had a sort of like a mentor-mentee kind of situation going on. So like for all the exchange students, we were assigned like a mentor/buddy, and they were in charge of us for the period that we're there. So that really helped me adjust better. Of course, with it being a long-term program, I did go through the culture shock, the waves of like, I love being here and this is great. And then after a month, I was like, okay, I've had enough. I want to go home. I can't believe I actually am doing this for a year. Like, why did I do that? and then the constant crying and all that. So that's something now that I'm grateful for, though, at least that I went through that, having that cultural shock, because now I have a way better, deeper understanding of how the international students feel when they're in the US. And now it's like not just a semester or a year when they're an exchange student, more of like as a 4-year degree student or PhD, master's, whatever situation is, because now it's like I talk to them and I'm like, do you know what culture shock is? And then they're like, I don't know what that is. And I'm like, oh, so then I start talking to them about it. I'm like, if you ever feel really low, like there's nothing wrong with crying. It's not wrong. Like, so I just feel more appreciative that way. So I feel like I'm more of a help for them now, and trying to just be there and distracting them. Like, don't stay home alone. Like, let's do something together. And then the other thing would be that I think essentially with my first study abroad experience is that I learned what my passion was and which direction I wanted to go with my career and my degree. Because essentially I went to a 2-year school because, in all honesty, I thought going to a 4-year school was a waste of time when I didn't know what I wanted to even do. So I thought, if I went to a 2-year school, at least I'll get gen eds out of the way and then I'll figure it out if I still don't know what to do. So I'm grateful for that short-term experience, because then at least it started sparking interest of like, what kind of careers are there in terms of international, like what can I do? And now it's like, at that point I was looking at very narrow-mindedly of what was available. And now I'm like, you know what, anything can be done internationally. So that's why now when people ask me, what's your career goal? What do you want to do? I realize I have multiple passions, and that in the long run is better because I become more open-minded and I know what I can do in the international focus with it.
Okay, I just want to jump in real quick. We do have a question about the academic side of the study abroad program process. So I know you all went on different types of programs. Could you talk about what kind of like your class schedule was, or what kind of classes you took, things like that?
Who wants to jump in first?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So I think what the question is, it says they're curious about the schooling part. Is that what you're talking about, Allie? Is that the question you're referring to?
Yes, it says she was we're interested in learning about the schooling part and what kind of, like, I think it might be like what kind of your class schedule was like. Like, did you have classes every day? Did you have the same classes every day? Things like that. How did you pick your courses? Just talking more about that.
Oh yeah, and she gave a little context where they said they had high school exchange students living with them. Is it kind of similar? I would say it's not similar. We have some of our programs where we do have a homestay, which is where you live with a local family. But the accommodations is one of the things that changes depending on the program you decide. Typically, where you live is going to be either a shared apartment or a dorm or a homestay. So homestay where you live with a family, a local family, can be an option for you. But then also, I think the other part of the question is they're curious about the schooling part as well, like in terms of your classes and things like that. So if you guys could talk about like what kind of classes you had or how often you had classes and maybe how rigorous it was. What was the academic rigor like? Was it harder than you thought UWM was, or what was your semester like that way?
I could go first with that.
Sure, let's go. Violetta, Destiny, and then Monique.
For me, my program was an exchange program. So how it worked with us is that with my university anyway, we were only given a list of courses we were allowed to choose from. And they were all in English, so English taught, but with a classroom of Korean students. So I was able to interact with everybody, but majority of the class was with Korean students. And so after I chose my classes, it was similar to with UWM. We had like our PAWS version, and we were able to see what time our classes were and such. And the difference that I was surprised with is that I realized then, oh, wait, not everybody's education system is like ours. Like, why didn't I realize that before? Because with me anyway, in Korea, my classes, I didn't have homework assignments. So that was kind of like exciting, but then at the same time, it was like a weird situation for me. But it's because then I realized, oh, well, they see it more like you're an adult. That is an already like a responsibility you should already have on your own. So essentially what my grade was based on was on the midterm and the final. So that kind of made me nervous because I was like, oh, great. Well, if I don't do well on the midterm, I need to do really well on the final. So then that's where I kind of realized like, oh, now I understand why a lot of Korean exchange students that come, they're like, oh, the education system in the US is hard. So it's like, oh, well, now I understand why they say that though, because how they study and what they focus on is completely different. And how in terms of that. And then with the dorming situation, there is like a dorm culture in Korea. So that was actually my first time when I didn't get to live in a dorm. So with me, I got to either choose to live with a Korean student or with another international student. So my first semester, I ended up with a Korean student. And then for my second semester, I chose to live with an international student. So it wasn't like with the US where with Milwaukee anyway too, like you apply for your dorm and then who you end up living with is who you live with for the rest of the academic year until, you know, the next year, if you end up living in the dorms again or not. But over there, it was per semester. So at least I had the experience of what is it like living with a Korean student? And then how is it like now with an international student? Because even though it is an international student, you got to consider too, you're not living with an American, you're living with another person from a different country. So you still have like a different cultural exchange, but in a living situation.
Hello. In Thailand, they gave us a list of classes we could choose from during orientation. And then we went online and chose the classes that fit best for our schedule. I had some evening classes and some morning classes. I don't remember my exact schedule because it was two or 3 years ago that I went and studied abroad. But I was able to change my classes, and I had an advisor that helped. Most of my teachers, they weren't they weren't from Thailand. And then my classes were with Thai students, and most of we didn't really receive any homework. We had exams, the midterms, and then I stayed in an apartment. The classes wasn't challenging. The grading system was different from what I was used to, but it was similar to PAWS.
And then for me, we didn't exactly, so since my program was shorter, and then we were going to city, probably the longest time that we stayed in a city was, wait, I'm sorry. I was reading the comment in the chat. Not really about city abroad, but does the... Okay, so not really about city, but does first require you to like... No, okay, so Japanese does not really need... The first level of the Japanese language at UWM is actually very helpful. So basically they break it down for you. If you are like have no prior knowledge about Japanese at all, that's fine. They'll work with you. And then they start from the very, very, very beginning. So don't ever feel kind of fearful of that. But back to what I was saying. So since my program was shorter, then it didn't have actual structured classes per se, but we were doing more so a subject, I guess. And then that place was the subject. So for instance, when we first got there, we went to a university and we actually talked to a professor, and the professor did a presentation on globalization. And so for the first 2 days, we learned about globalization in that city. But then when we went to another city, like say, for instance, we went to Hiroshima, where they had the atomic bomb blast, we went to the museum, and that was our, I guess, class time. And so sometimes the program would run longer. We wouldn't be getting out of class until like 7 o'clock, and then we're kind of like tired for the rest of the night. But sometimes we would get done early, and then we can kind of get to do whatever we wanted to do. And so since we were bouncing around all over Japan, we stayed in various places. We stayed in a hotel. We stayed in a school once, which was kind of creepy because it was dark and it was kind of away from the city, but you can kind of see the city. And then it was a room where there was full of mannequins, and it was terrible. And so, but luckily I was able to get my own room with a nice view. Anyway, and so I stayed in a school, I stayed in a hotel, I stayed in a hot spring resort, which was fabulous. Yeah, everywhere.
That mannequin thing sounds really creepy, Monique. Going to sleep at night, yeah. No, thank you. So I just dropped my email. I know we're coming up on the 5-minute mark for the meeting. I just dropped my email into the chat. So if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm curious with the students who are listening out there. Perhaps you guys want to drop in maybe where you're thinking about studying abroad, either a city or a country or a region. Drop that into the chat so we can see maybe where you all are thinking about studying abroad. Spain, we got a Spain. Okay, Japan, nice. Anyone else know where they want to study abroad? Even if you're undecided, put that in there too. I know someone was asking really specific. London, Italy. Oh, I love Italy. It's my favorite European country. We didn't have any, we were heavy on Asia, I just realized. Except Destiny had London in there. Undecided, Italy, London. Great. I just want to say, I want to put a plug in for anyone learning a language, right? We talked about languages a little bit, and I know Violetta, you improved your Korean, and Monique, your Japanese. But if you're studying a language at all, the best way to practice that language really is to go to the country. Like, I was a French major. I thought I knew French before I took it for years in high school, and then in college. I found out when I got to Paris, I couldn't understand a word. So really the best way to understand and test your language, I know you're going to co-sign that, Monique, but the best way to test your language learning and to improve your language learning, if you're learning a second language, is to go to that country. Right, Allie? I know you went to France too, and but yeah, that's the best way. So, oh yeah, Violetta put in the chat to consider the FLAS scholarship. That's another great scholarship for language learners. It stands for Foreign Language Area Studies. And so if you're learning one of the languages that is included under the FLAS scholarship, that's a phenomenal scholarship to get. And you don't even have to go abroad to get it. You can get it to take classes at campus. So definitely check out our website. I think Allie dropped it in the chat earlier to search for all of our programs. All of the financing ways, get your passport, talk to your advisor. You have, I think, the first steps, of course, right now you can do minimal commitment, low key in the comfort of your own home, exploring our website, setting up a meeting with your advisor, setting a virtual meeting with us to kind of talk about your options. So those are all things that you can do right now. Any final comments from any of our students? You guys did such a great, amazing job. I loved it. Thank you for sharing. Any comments, words of wisdom from the student panel? Things you would do differently, things you wish you had known? Anything come to mind?
I just want to give one little plug about that, is that I would say I'm really happy a lot of people want to go abroad. And also, if you're kind of thinking, well, when do I start, or how do, like the slide of where do I start or how do I do this? I compare it to when you were first looking for universities, when you were a junior or senior in high school. So it's kind of like, consider how long did it take you to narrow it down to your top 3 to 5 schools and where you ended up and why you chose those as your top schools. So it's the same thing with the study abroad programs. Choose your top 3 to 5, and then if you can't narrow it down to your top 2 at least, Then you can also just talk to Ramon or any of the other study abroad coordinators, and then they'll be able to narrow it down with you based on what your goals are and such. So I would say just take time to consider what programs you'd be interested in, why, and then from there, it makes it a lot easier just to figure out like where to go from there.
Great.
Just don't be afraid. Don't ever be afraid.
That's a great advice, Monique. Don't be afraid. Open your mind. Jump in. I mean, we have, again, like I mentioned earlier, a shorter term programs. If you're not sure you want to commit to a semester or a whole year, try a virtual opportunity first. That's dipping your toe a little bit, and then you can do like an in-person one for a summer or a winter program, or you can go for a full semester or fully commit like Violetta did for the whole year. She did the whole emotional roller coaster, which is completely normal. So in a semester, like Destiny did, whatever, we have a program and a term for you is really the message that I hope everyone kind of gets out of this. So again, I thank everybody for attending. I did drop my email in the chat. Feel free to email me anytime with questions that you have. I thank the panel. I thank everyone for attending. I thank Allie for fielding all the questions and answering. We hope that you'll attend any of the remaining events for Education Abroad Week. Remember to check that out on our website. We have a few really, really good ones. We even have recordings of our financing session that's up there if you can attend a live one. So it's a great resource for you to check out. So if you have any final questions, email me. Otherwise, everyone have a great afternoon, and thank you again for attending. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.